SCP podcast. My name is Daniel Oganyemi. I have the honor of serving in the education domain of SCP. And this is a continuation of something that we recently started called the Past-President Series. And the past presidents we're referring to, of course, of the Society of Consulting Psychology. And oh my gosh, we have yet another amazing conversation in store for us today. Today, we are talking to Dr. Randy White. I'm going to just cherry pick some elements of his bio because there's no way that a few paragraphs can encapsulate all this man has done. Dr. White is the co-head of leadership in TRIUM, a joint program from HEC, London School of Economics, and NYU Stern. He's taught several international and leadership courses in the EMBA program. He started his career at the Center for Creative Leadership and then became a founding partner of the Executive Development Group, which specializes in leadership consulting to C-suite executives and the boards of large global organizations. We're going to talk about this, but one of the things that he's best known for is his book, Breaking the Glass Ceiling: Can Women Reach the Top of America's Largest Corporations? That also had another edition that dropped several years ago, and many other pieces that he's written, both books and otherwise, including within the Journal of Consulting Psychology. He has degrees from Georgetown, from Virginia Tech, from Cornell. He served as the president of SCP, as I've already mentioned. He's a fellow in several divisions, including SCP Division 1 and Division 14 as well, a lifetime fellow of Association for Psychological Science. I mean, I told you, the list can go on and on and on. This is the part I really love, though. He contributes consulting to Save the Children, the Paralympics, and sailing, and other international philanthropic causes. And when not in airports, which can be a daunting place for many of us, Randy enjoys cycling, sailing, and the people and food of Miami. Wherever you are listening, will you please help me welcome Dr. Randy White to the podcast? Dr. White, how are you?
I'm fine, and I'm really happy, Daniel, to be here. Thank you. It's an honor to be interviewed by you.
Well, thank you for being here. Can we hop right in?
Pardon?
I said,
Yes.
Can we hop right in?
Sure. Yes, you can.
Well,
Go right ahead.
I mentioned in your bio, and one of the things that you are maybe best known for has been cited several times, several thousand maybe times, is your book that you co-authored, Breaking the Glass Ceiling: Can Women Reach the Top of America's Largest Corporations? It has, of course, widely been cited. It remains one of the leading texts in leadership development. I just really want to know what led you to that research and to write about the topic.
Well, it's actually a very long story. Let me see if I can make it short. I was at the Center for Creative Leadership. We had been doing all the interviews for a book that would later appear called The Lessons of Experience by my colleagues Morgan McCall, Mike Lombardo, and Ann Morrison. I was also part of that team. And we had worked very deeply with three particular organizations and had interviewed 79, I think there were 79 usable cases. And they were very deep interviews, open-ended critical incident interviews. It turns out Working Woman magazine, I don't know if people remember that, but there was and I think it's being published again, or it came back again. Working Woman magazine got wind of the fact that there was a study of derailment, but focused on men, and wondered whether there was any one of us that might be interested in doing a similar study with women. I kid you not. What happened is the operator at the Center for Creative Leadership didn't know who to contact, and she sent the call to me. And this is the era of when you wrote things down on a little pink slip. And okay. I wrote it down, what she was telling me, and I was all excited. I got partway down the hall, and my colleague, Ann Morrison, said, "Oh, take that." And the rest is history. Ann had been pushing to try to interview women. In the original study, we only interviewed 3 women. That's Oh, at the very top of large organizations who were in sort of the executive pool. And she was so excited, and she is truly the brains and the energy behind it. She ran with it. And of course, because I had the slip, I got to be #2 on the book. And then Ellen Van Velser. The issue, I think, for me was I was the guy, I was the male on the study of women. So
Mm.
it led to certain, it gave me the opportunity at an early stage of my career to get a lot of exposure at very senior levels. And of course, if you will, for other excluded groups, there was a group of African American men that replicated the study. There were
Mm.
other groups that then replicated and extended the study, and yet people like me, a privileged white guy, got invited to come and speak at various groups, and that's how it happened. I got lucky. It's terrible when you write your best thing first, but
Uh,
but but I got lucky, and I tried to make the most of the luck, and um, that's how it happened. Now,
yeah.
I do need to say, because I don't want this to come across as, oh, well, we just took advantage of the hand we were dealt, the opportunity. And Ellen and I did have a view, especially after working so hard to get the other interviews, the original 79, and only
Hmm.
3 were women. I want you to understand we went to 3, in the original study, 3 organizations. In order to find a matched set, about the equal number of women, we had to go to 25 Fortune 100s to find the same number of women as men in the original study. So that just
Wow.
showed you how underrepresented they were at these levels.
I would love to put a pin in that, and I'm already going off script. One of the things that I have started looking more into is this concept of allyship, and we can nuance that all day, every day. I have so many questions I can launch at you, but you mentioned something really interesting to me, that being the male in the group, studying women unlocked opportunities, and if I'm maybe assuming some of what you're talking about, at least some of those opportunities were in rooms that perhaps your colleagues or others were not invited into. Um, with this book, as well as throughout your career, how have you learned to leverage the resources and the opportunities that you have to advance the opportunities for others?
I believe you have to take advantage of the hand you're dealt. And I can look in the mirror and see, both based on where I went to school and how I grew up, the son of a military officer. I I I got a lot of opportunities that a lot of other people didn't.
Mm.
And I firmly believe that in order to be effective organizations, create lasting organizations that make a difference, organizations need to broaden the scope of who they look at, who they consider for senior positions. In a variety of ways, I got opportunities to talk to people and show them, tell them, explore with them the fact that when they only pick people who look like me, they're losing the majority of talent that's out there. There's a lot of talent. So I guess I'm trying to answer you in 2 ways. Number one, I got opportunities to go into spaces and talk about the research and talk about the fact that when you restrict the range, you throw away a lot of talent. I took that. I felt like I was a messenger of that. I'm not the only, well, obviously not the only messenger, but I was a
Sure.
messenger, and I took that very seriously.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. With the book and much of your work, even beyond the book. I mean, you talked about that, your best work being your first work. I think you still have a body of um, evidence that would suggest otherwise. But even if we go back to that book, and without spoiling it for those that haven't gotten into it, What is the honest answer to that? Can women reach the top in America's largest corporations? What progress have we made?
Yes, they can, and no, we haven't. Yes, they can make it to the top. There's no question, and there are some marvelous human beings who happen to be women who have made it to the top. And let's look at other excluded groups. There are other types of people who their skin color is different, or they come from a different background, or any number of things, and they've made it to the top.
Hmm.
I'd like to remind you, I believe, and I want to be careful with this, but I think in the 1950s, something like 75% of the Fortune 100 CEOs were from the Midwest. They were all white and all male, and most of them from the Midwest. That's how restricted the range was for picking
Wow.
people. And we've made progress. I would be lying if I told you otherwise, but we haven't made the progress that has always been hoped for.
Mm.
We haven't. I was on a Zoom this morning with someone in Western Europe who's from my TRIUM class. So these are some of the best and brightest in the world, and was just uh, she was shortlisted for an MD, for a managing director's job, but she's seen as too young and female, and so she didn't get it. And
Mm.
so we were talking exactly about what does she need to do? How can she get the feedback? So this is still a problem. It's a problem throughout the world. And yes,
Yeah.
it's a problem in North America.
And you, a couple of decades, you all released another edition of the book. What did you
Yeah.
learn in that time frame? And even since you re-released that newer edition, what have you learned from that research?
I would tell you that the women who have made it had support, and they had what I would call at least a sponsor, if not a mentor, who wanted them to succeed. This was a person, and some of these people come in all shapes and sizes. Some had daughters themselves. There are all kinds of background issues, but they had some support. They had someone that saw that they had talent and they wanted them to succeed, and they tried to give advice about how to move in their careers so that they got the requisite experience.
Mm.
Fixing a business that was broken, or starting something that the organization hadn't done, or any number of leadership experiences that would help to prepare them. The
Mhm.
thing that most surprised me from the book that we never really documented, Daniel, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this, it was sort of anecdotally, we would hear, but it wasn't really part of the interview template, it wasn't our protocol. The
Mhm.
number of women who had a supportive partner, that partner often had some business or enterprise where they could be, if you will, quote unquote, a little closer to home, who could help if they had children. Um, but they had a supportive partner who wanted them to be successful. And I
Mm.
really think that that's awfully important. And I still hear that reverberate when I talk to women at senior levels about how they have a supportive partner, and that
Mm.
partner is there, and they're sharing in childcare duties or whatever those things are, or he or she as partner is taking more of the burden of those kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many questions. With the consulting that you were doing, the research and the consulting that you were doing with all of these leaders, where did SCP come in? And as I read in your bio, all the work really with the American Psychological Association and beyond, where did that come in?
Well, the what happened is so I have two partners, or I had two partners in this private practice later, um, and one of them, Lily Kelly's, an African American woman, was at the Center for Creative Leadership. The
Hmm.
other is a woman named Sandy Schulman, is the former president of APA, and we all worked together for a long, long time. And we learned a lot from each other because we're all three different.
Mm.
Sandy's a gay woman, Lily's a Black woman, I'm a privileged white guy. It's hard to teach. It's hard to do your work if you're not doing your work.
Mm.
So my own practice was a microcosm of the kind of work that we wanted to do. And I tried to bring those perspectives in governance to APA. And I happened to meet the moment. APA was going through lots of changes and lots of dealing with diversity and ambiguity and all the kinds of topics that I was trying to deal with as a practitioner and trying to do research.
Sure.
And APA governance just gave me the opportunity to try to also live that out and try to make our psychology, our larger practice and discipline, more welcoming to a wide variety of people.
Yeah, so you've really built a career of elevating voices, and as we were preparing for the podcast recording today, you talked about when you became president of SCP, you really want to elevate client voices. It's one thing for consultants to talk about the work that consultants are doing. Why did you find it necessary to elevate client voices, and how was that received?
Well, I hope it was received well. I thought that it was important to try to bring some of our clients. I wasn't the only one that did it, but I brought one of the things I did is I brought a very senior client who was well placed to talk about what it was like to use a consulting psychologist as a coach. And I thought by bringing client voices into the room, it helped all of us understand what are our clients looking for from us? How can we meet them? How can we make whatever our academic preparation is useful to them? How can we be value add? They're our customers. Yes, I know they're clients or they're patients, or depending on what part of psychology you're in. But how do we take our science and help them meet their, how do we help them meet the stresses and strains and be higher performers in their own right? I often tell people who want to do, particularly who want to do coaching, but even if you want to do consulting, but I tell them this in terms of coaching. What I want you to imagine, I'm afraid of heights, Daniel. I'm quite afraid of heights.
You spend a lot of time in airports and airplanes. I assume airplanes.
Airplanes are fun. There's something around you. You're not in, but I'm afraid of heights. I tell people that when you're going to coach someone, especially a high-performing senior executive, I want you to imagine you're in a roller coaster and you're at the top of the highest roller coaster you can imagine, and there are no guardrails on your roller coaster car. You're going to lock arms with that person and you're going to go straight down. You know, so much of psychology, especially the clinicians, is about creating this barrier. And so much of what we do is what we do when we're consulting and when we're coaching is we create a safe space where someone can hold a mirror up and say, do I like what I see? And that's not for the faint of heart. Your job as a consulting psychologist is to help people do that in a safe way so that they can see themselves as clearly as possible. After all, they're the experts on themselves. We're an expert on a methodology of how to do that.
Right.
We're learning partners. We're not doing something to someone. We're doing something with someone. And we're partners in that exploration. And it's not for the timid. If you're not willing to take a ride with your client, I don't see how you can be helpful. You can't be so removed from that situation. You're part of the situation and you learn something from every single encounter. But overall, you learn something from every client. And I think every consulting psychologist needs to have that headset on. You're always learning. And after all, they know more about their situation than you do. They're the expert.
I'm such a fan of the way you frame that because too often times, at least in my personal life, I've seen people, mentors, or perhaps they're well-meaning others, um, they love to impart wisdom. I'm using air quotes for those that might
Yeah.
be listening to us. They love to impart wisdom, and it's with this unspoken rule that it's applicable to me. What was good for you is applicable to me. And the better mentors that I've had are the ones that can use situations in their own lives, give examples, but still help me reach that answer myself. Um, Not because what they're saying is invalid to them and potentially to others, but they allow me to be the expert of my own journey and the master of my own fate.
Right.
And it sounds similar to exactly how you're conceptualizing what it means to be a coach and consultant.
I always laugh when I hear wisdom. My British colleague, Phil Hodgson, whom I've written a couple of books with, calls wisdom what I shall do on Monday. And and the whole idea is if you're doing, Daniel, if you're doing exploration on Thursday and Friday with a coach, with a consultant, with somebody like you or like me, what you're trying to do is you're having a guided conversation through questioning, through examination, through asking why. And what you're helping the person do is make a decision maybe about something they'd like to try, not something you
Mm,
say, go do.
mm,
Why don't you try this? Or, wow, that's an interesting idea. Why don't we see if this will work? And you're allowing the person to experiment in real time. And if you have the guts, what you're trying to do is have them come back and say, you know, I tried that. That was the stupidest thing I could have ever done. All the way to the other extreme of, I tried that. It was wonderful. I never imagined how impactful that would be.
mm.
That's why I like teaching in the EMBA program because you have people who are actually in real jobs. They're in senior level jobs mostly, and they're going to leave your classroom and they're going to go try something that you said. And you better be prepared for them to come back and give you some feedback about how stupid your idea was or how great it was.
Sure.
And you always, that back and forth is how we learn and grow and change and improve. And you cannot, you cannot separate yourself from that process because when they come back and say it didn't work, why didn't it work? Let's talk about it. I can learn something from that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the greatest compliment a teacher, a coach, a consultant can have is I heard something you said and it had an impact on me and I tried it and it worked.
Mm,
That's the greatest gift there is. That really is. And that's the piece that keeps you coming back and saying, well, I'm going to keep doing this. This is really great.
yeah. In consulting psychology, and there, I mentioned earlier, there's this through line with your entire career where you've elevated others, and we discussed before how um, you've urged others to be in leadership and otherwise engage with SCP. And you called SCP the Isle of Misfit Toys, which okay, so I might be a little young for that reference, I've come to realize, but one of my favorite movies of all time is Toy Story, and I recently took my kids to see Toy Story 5. I won't spoil Toy Story 5 for those that have not seen it yet. But maybe I'll go back to like, I don't know, Toy Story 3 maybe, or maybe 4, one of those. It all follows the same plot. Something happens to toys, have to bond, they got to figure it out. But in Toy Story 3 anyway, there is the misfit toys, right? Where we don't have our owner anymore, we don't belong, and we're still trying to find our way. Help me understand how whether it's the Isle of Misfit toys or some of the toys that are in the real toddler playroom in Toy Story. How does SCP the Isle of Misfit toys and how is that a strength?
Daniel, you just said it. You said we don't fit. So I want you to imagine all the toys in the room have been cast off in some way, and they're all trying to find their way. And they begin to realize if I find my way all by myself, I'll still be alone. I need other toys who are just like me, and together we'll figure out a path. Well, I think that SCP has been a home for misfit toys. I mean that as a compliment. I hope people are
Right,
not
right.
offended by that, because I think it's been a home for people who, in their psychology program, or they're already out of their program, they're in practice, but they're sort of off on their own going, this isn't really as fulfilling. I'd like to do something else. I'd like to coach, or I'd like to go inside an organization and learn to consult. Or it's been a place where people can come and learn from each other, learn the art and craft of doing consulting, coaching psychology. There are various subgroups inside SCP to learn some of these things and to share some of their experiences and learn and grow through those shared experiences. And lastly, I call it finding your voice.
Hmm.
Finding your voice is sort of growing in some expertise and being able to find that you can practice your craft, and you can help a leader in an organization, you can help a leader one-on-one, you can make a difference. And again, when I first came, it's been a long time ago, it was very welcoming. And right away, look at what you're doing as well, Daniel. Right away, even without a whole bunch of credentials, a lot of people were thrown into, well, why don't you help us organize the midwinters? Why don't you be on the program committee? Why don't you? Whereas it used to be, you had to really earn your stripes before you could do those kinds of things. At SCP, when you showed up, shook hands, and said, I'm committed and I want to work hard, you got suddenly somebody was tapping you on the shoulder saying, come on, Daniel, I need you over here. I can see you would be really helpful doing XYZ. So again, it was a bunch of people who were trying to find their way in consulting psychology, and it's still the most welcoming group that I know of inside psychology.
I resonate with that a lot. I mean, there are plenty of spaces that I get to be in where it feels like you have to lead with your credentials, and it's this political jockeying of who's done what and how big of a grant or a client you've had or how big of a class it is that you've taught. And to your point, I've actually I got more involved with SCP once I was starting to suss out some of the other divisions. And this is no slight to, psychology. I think psychology is the best field. I work with a bunch of scientists and I tell them the same thing. Psychology is the best field, Um, but every place has their ego, every place has their politics. I
Yeah.
found SCP to maintain the same level of excellence and quality while finding a way to be just as open and welcoming as, well, really not as any place else. It truly is a special place. So yeah, that certainly resonates with me.
But think about it. This is a place where people ask you to step up and be your best.
Hmm.
We give, we try to give one another the freedom to work their way into a position. If you have to wait and you're already ready, you're ready and you have all these credentials, then oh, come on. How about we learn most from experience. That's
Yeah.
where we learn. So let people have some experience along the way. By the way, when you do that, I think people perform beyond their expectations, and it's wonderful to watch that happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to be preachy, but I do believe what you're experiencing is the openness of, hey, you're here, you'd like to learn, we need some help, doing this or doing that in the larger SCP organization. Why don't you help do that? And 6 months later, a year later, you're going, look what I got done. And look how much better or how evolved SCP is because of that person's work.
Yes.
So,
We're gonna put our tray tables up, and we're gonna start our final descent with these. I have a few more questions that I want to lob at you. There's a lot happening in our world right now. There's artificial intelligence, and other generative AI. There's the shifting federal and cultural landscape, and I think just this is a big question, and you can run with it however you will. What is or what are the risks that you see within leadership, consulting, coaching, and maybe what's even keeping you up at night?
that's a big question. And there are a lot of ways into this. So I worry, I have a lot of worries about the future of psychology, the future of consulting psychology, a variety of things. First, what's keeping me up at night is the death of democracy or the threat of the death of democracy. And I believe when you look post World War II, what you see is that much of what we teach and much of our value set, our shared value set, Daniel, yours and mine, David's, other people, is all around what some people call soft skills, motivating others, listening to others, valuing difference, creating strong teams that have a wide bandwidth of acceptable behaviors, all in the service of higher performance. Notice I haven't touched AI yet, so just give me latitude here.
You got time.
I worry that what's going on in the United States is the death and destruction of democracy. It's what we teach. Think about it. I keep trying to write an essay that has a through line or a red thread that shows that much of what we teach in modern leadership and much of what underlies the whole idea of coaching for development is really around a set of democratic ideals about the value and dignity of human beings, the spirit of individuality, the idea of the group is greater than the sum of its parts, those sorts of things. And yet we're trying to shove a particular set of ideals, beliefs down people's throats that is trying to roll the clock back to, I don't know, the 18th century or the 19th century, or certainly Jim Crow, that's for sure. And my experience of that is, first, I'm angry as an individual actor. The second issue is I sometimes feel powerless, except I'm reminded when I walk in the room and meet those 62 people, how wonderful it is to be a school teacher and a consultant and trying to coach people, because I see their energy and enthusiasm and their ideas, and they're not to be contained. But remember, I teach internationally. So I'm also aware it used to be, as a US person coming to teach leadership, whoa, look at what's going on. Now it's, ha, ha, ha. Where did your guy come from? And how can you let that? So there's a lot of sort of dealing with what's going on in the world. I know, I'm trying to be careful here. I know that this person talks about the rest of the world was making fun of us and now they're not. He's got that wrong.
Mm.
They weren't making fun of us, and now they are. And that saddens me. I told you I grew up in a military household. I'm sure my parents would be, they'd be appalled.
Mm.
Now the next way I would like to attack your question, which is the broader sort of what's going to happen, AI and all of these things. I don't know. I would tell you, Daniel, that in the summer of 2023, I went to Cartagena as a special guest of all of my TRIUM students. They do a special, after they've graduated, they do a special class and they invite their favorite professors, not just professor. They invite their favorite professors, 2 or 3 of them, to come back and spend several days sort of talking about their current research or what they're thinking about, sort of the question you were asking me.
Sure.
And I was on a panel, and I'm not going to use names, it wouldn't matter anyway. I was on a panel with a gentleman who's incredibly bright. He's the chief technology officer of a really major organization.
Mm-hmm.
So this is now 3 years ago. And he said to me, in front of all these people, there were 100, I don't know, there were a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what's leadership going to look like in the near future, in the next 5 years? What's leadership going to look like? And I said, I don't know. And he said, no, let me say it this way. Within 5 years, am going to have a team, or we are going to have teams at my organization that are made up of human beings and agentic AI, bots. There are going to be a team of 6 or 7. We'll have 1 or 2 bots, and the rest will be human beings. What's leadership going to look like? And I turned to him and said, I haven't a clue. And the place cracked up. But the issue, Daniel, is I haven't a clue. So I need to tell you the rest of the story. I got so excited by this question, so excited. Wow. I don't know what's going to happen. I called David. I put a post. People can't see this. I'm holding up my phone. I put a post on the SCP listserv.
Mm-hmm.
About, I was just asked this question and told that in 5 years, blah, blah, blah. I gave all this background that I just gave you. And I got back immediately from several SCPers who are still active. Oh, it'll always be a human world. Don't get old. Oh, don't worry. And it went, and I was going, excuse me? Guys, I just got asked the $64,000 question, and you're telling me not to worry about it, and it's all okay, and we don't need, it's not going to affect us. Want to bet? Things are moving so rapidly. This is Gutenberg. This is the printing press. This is revolutionary. We are so far behind the 8 ball. And the AI, coupled with the notion of being alienated from larger society. You know, we often do things all by ourselves in our cottages now. Mm-hmm. Think the book Bowling Alone. And the death of democracy. I think as psychologists, we sit at the precipice of what is human interaction going to look like? How are we going to aid in human interaction? What is it going to be like to work inside organizations? Oh, and by the way, are we going to have a whole group of workers who are displaced because there are no jobs for them? What are we going to do to counsel them? How are we going to coach them? Sorry, I'm getting all wound up here, but your question is so big and so important and I haven't a clue what the answer is. But right now, again, what's keeping me up is the death of democracy and the connection between democracy and what effective leadership looks like, at least in my brain and in most of the post-World War II literature on leadership. And then the second thing is, I don't know what we're doing about AI. We're all talking about it, but I don't know what we're doing about it. And then the third issue is, how can consulting psychology or psychologists aid in something that even our Congress isn't dealing with, which is the rapid deployment of AI, such that whole sections of workers are likely to be wiped out in the very near future. Sorry, I went off on 1,000 tangents, but Daniel, you asked, and that's what's going on in my brain.
No, I'm such a fan, and we're gonna have to circle the air because I'm not ready to land it yet. I have so many more questions. One of the things that you had mentioned before, I think you said this when we were prepping, is leadership as a concept of democracy. And so I guess what I'm trying to understand better is what does that mean? How are you preparing more leaders, whether it's domestic or internationally, to be democratic leaders or leaders of the democracy within their respective places?
I think most of what we teach, like decision theory, decision making, the kinds of ways we use leaderless groups, the way we try to help people think about structuring teams, the way we teach leaders to not be, the way we portray leadership is on a continuum from sort of authoritarian to a real shared power model. If you stop and think about it, authoritarian or expert, and then we move to sort of group decision making, and then we move to leader gives up her power and works with the team, especially when we're exploring new worlds. I don't mean to go into Star Trek, but when we're trying to do new things or new ideas, sometimes the leader oftentimes is not the expert, sometimes has the vision of where we could go, but doesn't know how to get there, or lacks some of the expertise, but either has some way of conceptualizing what a future could be, but needs to create a space to achieve that future and needs some expertise to be able to do it. That's all in keeping with a more advanced view. I'm moving from left to right here. A more advanced view of what leadership looks like in a very democratic way that allows each individual, back to this notion of each individual, their dignity. And what you're trying to do is create a space where people perform at their very best. There are two questions I always tell leaders to ask. Question number one, are you a learner? Please, this has nothing to do with where you went to school or your grade point average or whether you're this scholar or that scholar. Are you a learner? And the second question, do you as a leader create an environment where every person can maximize their potential? Do you create an environment where everyone can maximize their potential? That means everyone, not just people who look like you, or act like you, or speak the same language as you. That means everyone. And Daniel, I think that's, if you stop and think about that, if a person, me, believes there is an active view of destroying democracy, you're destroying the things that underlie moving in the direction of being able to create that space where people can maximize their potential. Because now I don't value everyone. I value some and not others. Am I making sense?
You certainly are. You certainly are. And my pause is to ponder and to discern if I can take up 8 more hours
Sure.
of your day with all the questions that you're unlocking. Um, I want to lob another unfair question to you. I actually asked Dr. Pennington this in the
Okay.
conversation that we had, and I acknowledge that as an unfair question to him, and I'm going to do the same to you. Um, what do you hope your legacy is? And you can speak both for within SCP as well as in your overall life's work.
I've always wanted to make a difference. And when you want to make a difference, what you're really about is touching someone with an observation, of being able to help someone find a voice, of encouraging someone that you see that has talent. There are lots of people running around SCP that I would love, who are very talented, and people love them and admire them. And there are people running around the TRIUM classroom that people love them and admire them. I would like them to be able to say that they had several people who helped them along the way and that I was one of them.
Mm.
The best compliment I ever had, I was teaching at Duke at this point in time. And we did a closed course for a very large North Carolina firm.
Okay.
And there was a woman, characteristics of this woman doesn't matter, but I do want you to know she was a single mom. And she was a modest presence in the organization at that point in time. She was on a track. Maybe it wasn't as fast as it would later become. She was on a track as a single mom. And she had there were some impediments. When I saw her again about 7 years later, I think it was 6 or 7 years later, she had moved up. And she said, "I bet you don't remember me," as she shook my hand. And I said, "No, I remember you were in a class," because I was actually visiting this company. So, it was a pretty easy conversation of, yes, shaking hands. And yeah, I kind of remember you. And she said, "You said," and she filled in the blank with what you said. And here I am today. That's the best compliment you could ever give a teacher, a consultant, a coach. And I was both humbled, and I didn't know how to respond to her except to say thank you. And that's the legacy that I would like to believe that we're constantly paying it forward. And my job, my what I stand for, what I'm about, is taking a roller coaster ride with people and learning about them and trying to be of help. I haven't always been successful. I've made a fool of myself many times. I still remember this one French guy when I taught at Duke that wrote in the comments, "Duke should be ashamed and embarrassed to have this gentleman teaching."
Wow.
He told me, oh yeah, he really roasted me. And I remember doing a workshop with Morgan McCall, Mike Lombardo, and myself at APA in 1985. In 1985, and our workshop evals, they said we were three brilliant young men flapping our wings over the abyss of lunacy. They just thought we were crazy men.
Sheesh. Oh my goodness.
And I remember teaching with Morgan and myself and Esther, who later married Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
And we got laughed out of the advanced management program at Duke. We got laughed out of the room.
Wow.
And you always get rated on a 5-point scale where 5 is really great and 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got 2s and 3s. So I want to say, Daniel, the road hasn't been, sort of a straight up the hill, sort of 45 degrees. There have been a lot of times where you walk away and you go, "Oh my goodness, what did I do wrong, or what didn't I say, or how did I get so misunderstood, or how could I be so wrong?" But you know what? There was always someone there that sort of said, "Okay, let's try it again."
Mm.
And so my job now is to help people say, "Let's try it again. Let's make the most of what you already know. Let's help you." And when I meet someone, I'm always, someone whether it's a colleague or a client, how can we do a better job of, or be higher performing, or how can we use our talents that much better?
Yeah, absolutely love that. If we were in front of a live audience, I would invite everyone to give you a, a rousing applause. Because yeah, I mean the legacies that we hope and the legacies that come to fruition we'll never know. But I believe that what we set out to do, as long as it's with the pure heart and um the appropriate motive, then the legacy that we hope will be the one that gets left. Can we land this by me asking if you had 30 seconds with the next generation of consulting psychologists, what's one thing you want them to carry forward?
Create a space where whoever you're working with can feel safe to explore how to be higher performing.
Mm,
And with humility, learn from them.
mm.
They will teach you incredible lessons.
Love it. Dr. Randy, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to circle to? Make sure we do.
The one thing that I would like to go back to is I would like to, with my hand held to the next generation or
Mm,
several generations, I think it's harder to do what I did in my career today. And I'm concerned about that. I worry about that. I've had a great time. I've spent so much of my time outside the United States teaching. I've had a wonderful platform. No, I'm not the world's biggest name in psychology or any such thing, but I've had a really great run, and it didn't come easily, but I see so many impediments now, so many difficulties. There are so many more competitors in our field. People worried about the ICF and certification for coaching, and APA doesn't do any certification for coaching, and then what's going to happen with model licensure? And I don't want to get into all of the different things, but I think it's harder. It will be harder. It will be better, but I think my class, my generation, my cohort, why don't I settle on that? My cohort
mm-hmm.
didn't have as many impediments, so we could sort of do our own thing, try things, do things. Winston Churchill said, he would have died a drunk if it hadn't been for World War II. He said, the mark of a learned individual is stumbling from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm.
Mm.
And we got to stumble from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. Now I worry there's so much on the line sometimes for people, and they have student debt, and they have so many things. And I worry for them. I want them to have as an exciting a career and as smooth a runway as I've been fortunate to have. And that's the other thing, that when I put on my governance hat from APA, or my hat around the care and feeding of psychologists who follow in our footsteps. I do work. Daniel, I worry about those things, and I don't have answers for how to solve all those issues.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Rennie, I'm so appreciative, not only for the time that you've provided here, but for the trail you've blazed and for allowing me to be someone who is now, whether you know it or not, I consider myself to be on your tree now. So allow me to be a part of your tribe. So yeah, thank you for being a part of this episode, being a part of this series that I'm blessed to steward at this point. And I look forward to meeting you soon.
Good. Thank you, Daniel. I'm honored to be part of your tree. So there you go. Makes two of us.
Thank you.